Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon Podcast, Episode 4, Deer Species, Trophies and Memories. We always have good intentions to try and get these podcasts out as soon as possible, but work and family and other issues always seem to delay them. But hopefully you're all still keen to hear the next episode, and we'll get on with it very shortly. So the UK is very lucky. We actually have 6 species of deer, which only 2 are truly indigenous. Obviously that's the red and the roe deer. Fallow deer probably were certainly introduced back by the Normans, and then you've got the 3 other species there. You've got the Reeves muntjac, the Chinese water deer and the sika deer, which probably arrived around about the 19th to the 20th century, brought over to be put in deer parks, obviously escaped, and are now spread out up and down the British Isles. So I think everybody's aim is to try and shoot all 6 species within the UK. I've been incredibly lucky. I've got roe on the doorstep. Reds are Highland reds. They're not obviously your park reds that you see in some of the lovely photographs, but I've got access to reds. My career in deer stalking really started off chasing sika deer around the woods, and only in the last few weeks I was able to go and get myself a couple of muntjac down in Leicestershire. So that still leaves me the fallow and Chinese water deer to achieve, but I believe plans are in order for next year to actually be able to get out to those. So eventually I can tick the box to say that I've actually stalked all 6 UK species of deer. Now for some people it's always about trying to get the medal head or the best set of antlers on that species. For me it's more to be able to just go out and see the different environments that these animals work in. Yes, taking a trophy or getting a nice buck or a stag always makes it beneficial, because you actually get something to put on the wall and you can look back fondly and think of the stalk you've been through. But actually it's probably looking back at those stalks and having that memory, and that's why in some ways the podcasts have come about, because I can actually record those, and if nobody else listens to them I can listen back and review those memories that I produced of those stalks. It's just a way of kind of making a record of everything that went on. So I think we're going to talk about probably 3 stalks today. We're going to look at an amazing stalk on a sika out in Southern Ireland. We will probably look at a couple of, maybe a roe here that was memorable, my red on the hills, and if there's time actually it will be 4 stalks. We will look at the stalking the muntjac down in Leicestershire. So let's start. I used to stalk in Ireland quite a lot, and we were incredibly lucky that our hunting lodge where we stayed, you'd leave there, walk down probably about 300-400 metres, cross a little bridge next to a lake, and we were actually on our lease, 3,000 acre woods owned by a really nice chap, and we were able to go into the woods and basically shoot whatever was in season, so be it stags or hinds. This was obviously sika deer. So the day started, I remember it well, it was a November morning. It was absolutely bitterly cold. Everything was frozen. Just walking down the track out of the lodge, every footstep was crackly on the grass. We crossed over the little bridge, and it was a winding track that was loose stones, and you had to walk incredibly quietly. Obviously it was not even light at this point, early morning, and we're out. So creeping up this track, every footstep was just crunching. Didn't think it was going to be a successful stalk, but I thought what I'd do is I'd make my way down what we called the middle track. It was kind of a disused road right through the middle of the woods. We had a high track, a middle track and a low track. The high track was virtually impassable. The middle track was, as I said, it was a bit of an old road, and then the lower track led to an old forestry lodge at the bottom. So working my way along this track, every footstep was crackling, thinking I'm not going to see anything. Don't think I was in a particularly great mood because of this. And I remember getting probably about a good kilometre into the stalk, and I decided I'd just stop, and I looked down the track, and there was a mountain hare sat bang smack in the middle of it. Not something you see all the time. And I'm kind of watching this thing, thinking, what's going on? And I see a branch, what I think's a branch, move to the left-hand side. I look back, and the mountain hare's gone, but look up again, and that branch has now turned into the biggest, darkest sika I've ever seen. 8 points. He's looking at me. I'm standing there going, I'm bang smack in the middle of the track. What am I going to do? My plan had been to go all the way down the middle track, round to the back of the forest, which is a steep hill. So I'd set the rifle up with the long bipod, and I was making my way there. I wasn't expecting to see something on the middle track. You never do. It's too popular. Lots of people walk up and down it. All of us use it as a stalking route in and out of the woods. So the deer looks ahead of it, and I think at this point I need to get myself into a shooting position. So slowly descend to my knees, and eventually keep watching the deer. He looks away. I'll get myself flat on my belly. I'm now laying on the cold ground, looking at this deer, thinking, this is fantastic, but how am I going to do this? So I'm looking at the bipod. It's the long bipod, and I mean they're 12-inch legs. This is a bipod designed for shooting off the side off a steep hill. So I put the legs away, and I've got my, I think I actually had my 308 Seiko light barrel stainless steel, because I'd actually dropped my other rifle off to be rebarreled at this point. So I've now got the deer in the crosshairs. I've got a myopter scope on there with a little tiny cross in the middle of it, and I'm kind of propping myself up on my elbow, thinking I've got to get this shot, and it's not the most comfortable place, lying on the middle of a cold track. Take aim, squeeze the trigger. Now this Seiko has got almost like a hair trigger on it, and you hear, you feel bang, and I listen, and there's a definite good thump, and going for a heart shot, I think it was about 120 yards, I see the deer, there's a good reaction, and it goes off to the left and disappears. I'm thinking, hopefully that's it, we'll go and find it. So I lie there, wait, gather myself, get my composure back, because obviously I wasn't expecting that. It was just light had come up, and it was still bitterly cold. So a few minutes pass, I think, what felt like forever, and I head up the track to go and go to see whether or not I've actually got this. Get to the exact shot point. I could see exactly where the deer was standing. I knew it, marked all the locations, but there was nothing. There were no pins. I was like, there's no blood. What's gone on? That's a 308. I've just shot at it, 308 with a 150 grain bullet. And I'm looking and looking, and I can see where I think it's gone through the bushes, and I can see a broken branch. So I've tracked it, and I've gone up this bank, and I think, well, deer, you shoot them, they don't run up a bank. They always try and run back downhill. And I think I was there for a good sort of 20 minutes trying to find this thing. And actually what had happened is it had run up the hill, snapped the branch, doubled all the way back down to pretty much within 5 yards of where I'd shot it. And because it was so dark in colour, had fallen into a ditch and virtually become invisible. So finally finding this, happy days. One of the sort of the best moments to actually find, to be able to shoot after about, I think, 6 or 7 years, to actually shoot a really good sika stag. There'll be a photo. I'll put a picture up on with the link to this post on Instagram, so you'll be able to see it. But that was certainly a memorable stalk. So let's move on and have a look at the roe stalk. Again, this was just one of those ones that sticks in your memory. It actually turned out to be, at the end of it, once we had it measured, it actually turned out to be a gold medal, but the stalk was interesting. So very lucky with some of the land I've got, and it was an absolutely cracking afternoon. I remember the flowers were all out, you had all the sort of the nice grasses growing, and I was working my way down a steep sided valley. I'd seen a doe in the bottom, and then a bit further along there was another doe just quietly creeping along, not to disturb them, because the last thing you want to do, disturb a doe and she'll go disappearing off and take everything with her. And I think it was across the other side of the valley, just caught a glimpse of something while I was sort of glassing the hillside, and there was this buck was sat down. He was sat just, he'd come out, he'd literally just walked out of some thicket, and it just sat down. And you couldn't really see what he was like properly, but you could see he was a fairly big buck. And the day before, I'd been out on the other side of the hill, and I was walking along, stalking through the sort of the thicket again, and I remember being almost knocked off my feet by two bucks chasing. So there was a big old buck and another buck, and they were absolutely herring around the place. So I decided that's why I'd gone back the next day to see what was going on, but I decided I'd stalk on the other side of the valley and get glassing him. I'm sat there. I want to get a bit closer because I'm sort of 200-300 yards away, so I move up a bit more, and all of a sudden something catches my eye. Just in the valley below me, there's a doe. She's now watching me, and I'm watching this buck, watching her, and I'm thinking, if I get this wrong and I disturb her, she's going to send him off, and that's it. I've blown it. So I've got to sit there now, and I literally get myself down on the hillside, and I just sit quietly, keeping an eye on her, watching him, waiting for him to stand up, watching her, who's just hasn't taken her eyes off me. And I think I must have been there for a good half an hour, and eventually she just decides that obviously whatever she was doing, I wasn't a threat anymore, and she wanders off. So finally I can sort of get myself prepped. I get the sticks out, I get the rifle set up. I'm obviously sitting down because I'm less obvious on the hillside, and I get the scope on him and have a good look. He's not a bad looking old boy. Can't really make out the deformity of his antler from this position because he's still sat down, waiting and waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden he decides it's time to stand up. Well, that was it. I kind of got myself in position, got the rifle up, 2, 4, 3 this time, squeeze the trigger, good heart shot. There's a good sound, you hear the contact, a good reaction, and he literally turns and disappears back into the thick stuff. Right, okay, got to wait. Nothing comes out any further down, nothing comes out the top, so he's obviously gone down. He's in there somewhere. However, I can either go down the valley and straight back up again, but it's wet at the bottom and there's a river to cross, or it's about a mile walk down to a bridge where I can cross the bridge, I can get in, I can go and find him, prepare him over there, and actually then I can drag him up to the other side where there's road access and I can get out. No problem. We'll go for a mile walk round. So go all the way round, and it's a lovely summer's afternoon. Find the buck eventually tucked up under some thick cover, drag him out, and yeah, he's beautiful head, really nice head. A strange one, kind of 7 points on there. Hang him in a tree, do all the preparation work, grollock him out. Yep, he's definitely been fighting. He was worthwhile taking out. Obviously, probably just either at his prime or just passing it, and this other buck was pushing him around. So yeah, it's another one of those stalks where you never forget it, all because most of it I was spent being watched by a doe who at any point could have ruined the entire stalk for me. So yeah, that's my most memorable roast stalk. I'm not saying that's the only memorable roast stalk. Every stalk has a memory that you add to it, but obviously it's one to share that has a certain good memory about it, as well as that ended up with a gold medal rowhead. It's probably one of the only gold medal rowheads I've actually shot. I've taken others out to shoot decent sized heads and things like that, but for me to actually to get something along those lines it's pretty good. Generally it's one of those things, you're not out to shoot the biggest heads. You'd rather other people get to to take that opportunity. So let's have a talk about the red stag that I was able to get. Trying to get hold of red really took a long time up here. Made inquiries and with friends and things like that. People were going to organise days for me, but things never happened, and eventually it was like, I'm gonna have to sort this out for myself. Promises were never coming. So I made a deal with one of my my customers who has a hotel with access to stags, and did a little bit of a deal with him. So I remember turning up that morning, meeting the guy that was going to guide me up the hill. It was just as COVID was kind of slowing down and coming to an end. Well, I think we'd come out of the second lockdown, so yeah, an October day, pretty much the end of the season. And I remember we set off, or we drove in a bit first. We'd been spying up and down the valley, looking for where they might be, and we kind of set off up the hill, and we were climbing fairly rapidly, and it. Just goes to show my fitness levels probably quite weren't where I was expecting them to be. A bit of blowing out my ass at some points, but we were getting there. A couple of stops, and we were pretty much on top of the world. Mind you, it was pretty much vertical going up as I felt. We'd spied stags on the way up, and we'd finally kind of got near the top, and unfortunately they'd moved. So we were trekking along the top of the hillside, keeping an eye out for something, and radioing down to one of the spotters on the road below, obviously feeding back information. But it seemed like the stags were just pushing on. As we were pushing on, they were moving on. They weren't winding us at all, but they just, obviously that was it. They were moving for the day. So we then saw stalkers on the other estate working their way down the fence line. So we sat and waited and hoped they weren't going to wind the stags that we were after. But it's just one of those things. It just couldn't have been any worse, having their stalkers out and we're out. And if somebody wins them, they were obviously working the fence line to hopefully win something to get it to jump back over and head back onto theirs to get it. So we'd pushed on, and we're getting late now. The afternoon was drawing in, and we'd seen a few. We'd heard a shot on the other side as the other chap was taking people out, and I think he had 3 guests out, and they'd obviously got one. There was nothing got on our side. We'd watched a few arses disappear over the rocks in front of us, but we weren't anywhere near. So we carried on round the top of this sort of corrie, and we were looking back, and we got a radio shout saying that they were working their way up. So laying there, all of a sudden, they just popped out. They'd come up the corrie, and they were on the top. They were heading for the fence, and it's probably only 150 metres before they'd have been off our part of the estate, and they were onto somebody else's. But they were hanging around, and the guy with me was like, I want you to shoot the one at the back. The one at the back was, it looked pretty good, to be honest. So we moved forward a bit more, got into position, bit of a crawl, nothing too major. Got the rifle up. He said, shoot when you're ready. So took the shot. The stag probably good reaction from it. Probably ran about 30 to 40 yards, stopped, and fell over. Then they just kept coming. More stags just came up, and they all kind of just walked past this beast, and they must have come past us at 15, 20 yards as they carried on, and they were way off to the right, and they were heading out. So obviously, that was quite a bit of adrenaline rush watching the whole thing unfold. We headed over to the stag. And it was one of those things. It's something that I'd been out and I'd shot a red stag before, dragged my ass up the side of a hillside to get something, but nothing quite to that point where they literally were running past you and sort of, it was just exciting. And then comes the hard work. So I was like, so do we get a vehicle in here to extract this? Because we're on top of the hill and it's a long way back to the bottom. And the boys like, nah, we drag them out. And I'm like, we drag it out. Yeah. So we did all the prep work. I was past, here you go, you hold this bit because that's what you've come for, the antlers. And I'm like, well, not just the antlers. But yeah, we started dragging this thing. Unfortunately, it's rough getting out of there, and we were trying to work the best way down, the most efficient way, and it was pretty much down through the corrie. And I tell you what, it's probably one of the hardest extractions I've ever seen, and these guys do it on a daily basis, so hats off to them. But yeah, he goes, if the stag gets away from me, I won't be holding on to it. We'll meet it at the bottom. We'll find it when it gets down there. And at one point, it was so steep, it just went over the edge. And yeah, we found it after descending probably about another 150 meters. We found our stag, and we managed to get most of it out. But yeah, that's one of those things. That's a proper Scottish hill stag. So a memory that certainly is not going to disappear. Lovely creature, and a fantastic stalk. So our final stalk is the most recent, which was the muntjac. Got invited out by a friend of mine, and we went round some of his land, and we saw some muntjac deer and got onto one. So obviously not the most memorable, but that was my first muntjac. But the memorable stalk was probably after being there for about a week and a half of stalking where I was actually staying, and I'd been out and seen a few deer kicking about, nothing that was shootable. I'd shot a fox for the gamekeeper, and he was over the moon by that. And then I got one muntjac that morning after the fox, and he was really happy. But I think it was the last one. So I'd kind of assessed and worked out how these animals were doing, what they do, and worked out that they really were staying close to the tree line. So got out early in the morning. I think I started off at about sort of 5 a.m. Trekked up, and I thought if I'm quick I can get up here. I'd seen there was loads of activity, loads of muntjac poo on the floor, good trail. And I was standing, it was really bizarre, standing by this old tree, and I heard the strangest like little cackle or sort of squeak. And at first I thought it was a fox cub working up the track to me, but it actually just sort of, I stayed completely still, but it turned out to be a little muntjac doe, and she came trotting up and stood there and kind of sniffed the air and stamped her feet a bit, and turned off the track slightly. She wasn't sure, but she turned off, followed by obviously a little muntjac buck following her. Happy days. So they moved out down to the right hand side, and I'm watching them thinking, oh, that's it, I've screwed this up, they've winded me and they're away. But actually what they did was they went to the right and they dropped back to where they'd come from, and they went all the way around in a big circle. So earlier on I'd been sort of hiding by some rocks, and I sneaked back over to these rocks and just sort of ditched everything, ditched the sticks, ditched the bipod, and I'm tucked in behind these rocks, hoping this point that these deer are going to come out and they're going to cross this big bracken hillside. I'm lying there, and there's movement in the trees, and yeah, sure enough, they've done a big loop to double back to obviously come below me to come out. So I can see her, she's trotting through. There's one buck, and then there's another buck behind it. And I'm kind of like, happy days. Now, the only hope I can get is they come into the clear spot in these silver birch trees, and I can get a shot off. So I've kind of wedged myself on the rocks, and I've got the rifle up. And yeah, all of a sudden, one of the bucks just stops. Perfect window, almost like to pencil that bullet through. Set the rifle up, looking down at it, squeeze the trigger, bang. The little buck falls over. Obviously 308 on a muntjac's probably a bit overkill, but it's all I'd taken with me. Yeah, it was very short and sweet, but it was one of those stalks you can remember day in, day out. I'd sat on that hillside probably about 6 or 7 times and watched that view, and I think on the first time I'd been there I'd seen deer on the fence at the bottom, but they weren't stopping. But just to be in the right place at the right time, and actually to get another one of the species was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, they don't always have to be long stalks. They can be very short stalks, but they'll always bring you a happy memory. Got down to this little buck, and he was an old buck. He fairly well worn, not the biggest of antlers, definitely going back, but obviously he was being chased around by something younger that had come through, but he was the one that had stopped, and I'd managed to take him. So yeah, another exciting stalk and another deer species to put on my list. So yeah, only 2 more species to get now. Obviously that Chinese water deer and that fallow, but I believe they are lined up. I've had offers for them for next year, so hopefully we can get something sorted, and I can tick the boxes for all 6 UK species. I think every stalk has memories to add to it, and something will have happened that you will always remember it by. Obviously when you shoot a lot of deer, some of them just kind of blur into one, but it doesn't have to be that you got a trophy out of it or a set of antlers to go on the wall. I have quite a few sets of antlers on the wall, but even some of them you look back and you go, why have you put that up? But there was a reason for it, and it's one of those things, it's worth keeping, and you can look back and go, yeah, I remember that. Why did I get that? Why have I got that set of antlers that are still white? Oh, that was the first Scottish roebuck I ever shot. For example, it was in velvet, and it was tiny, but I moved up here. Somebody gave me the offer to go out and get one. Or that roebuck there was shot in Hull, for example, my first ever roebuck. It doesn't matter. It's precious to you. You as the person that's done it. I take a lot of pictures. People write game books and things like that. Obviously, I take a photograph, and then that way, every single deer that's ever been shot is recorded. It's date stamped, its time, its location. Normally try and take it with the rifle as well, and that way, if there's ever, you've always got a memory of it and a record of it. But if anybody ever asks, it's like, well, this is all the deer I've ever shot. So yeah, having a phone or a computer that's full of pictures of dead things is quite common in my house. But that's just one of the things that happens. So would I call myself a trophy hunter? No. I think most of my time is spent doing deer management and doing bits of forestry work and clearing out deer that are causing damage. But you occasionally get the opportunity to take something that's a good head. Even if it's not a good head, it's just one of those things. It's better to honour it and keep its antlers. So yeah, I don't think I'm a trophy hunter, but some would see it that way when you walk into the hallway and it's full of skulls. But it's just one of those things that every one of those has a memory, and I can tell you where they were shot and a bit of the story behind the stalk at the end of the day. So that brings us to the end of another podcast. Thank you for listening to my random wafflings, and hopefully you'll be back for the next one. I'm still trying to work on a 2-week schedule, but as I said at the beginning, it is difficult with work commitments and everything that's going on. Also having a chiller full of deer as well at the moment that need processing. It's, do I record a podcast or am I out there butchering? So we're getting there slowly. Summer's definitely on its way. Cover's coming up, so there'll be a little less stalking, and hopefully we can get some more entertaining podcasts recorded. Anyway, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.